I have been an embalmer for 14 years, and I need you to understand something about this work before I tell you what happened. Something that most people spend their entire lives carefully avoiding understanding, which is that the preparation of the human dead is not a clinical abstraction, and it is not a peaceful ritual, and it is not the quiet, dignified process that the funeral industry's careful language suggests when it uses words like preparation and restoration and care. It is intimate in a way that has no equivalent in any other profession. More intimate than surgery, because the surgeon is working toward a future, and I am working in the absence of one. More intimate than nursing because the nurse has a relationship with a person who can respond, and I have a relationship with a person who cannot, and who will never again be able to, and who is, in the most complete sense of that word, entirely dependent on what I do in the hours I spend with them in my preparation room between the moment they arrive and the moment their family sees them for the last time. That dependence is not metaphorical. That dependence is the weight I carry into work every night, and the weight I carry home every morning, and the weight that, after 14 years, I have learned to hold without being crushed by it, but have never learned to put down. I work nights by choice. There are embalmers who work days, who operate in facilities where the preparation room is adjacent to the administrative offices and the viewing rooms and the general activity of a funeral home during business hours. I am not one of those embalmers. I have always worked nights, and I have always worked alone, and I have always preferred it that way. Not because I am antisocial, and not because I have any romantic notion about the solitude, but because the work requires a quality of attention that I cannot sustain when there are other people moving through the building and phones ringing and the ordinary noise of institutional life happening on the other side of the preparation room door. The dead deserve better than distracted attention. They deserve the full focus of the person responsible for them, and I have always given that, and I intend to go on giving it. That intention, that professional ethic, is important context for what I am about to tell you. Because everything I am about to tell you happened as a direct result of paying close attention, of noticing, of being the kind of person who sees what is in front of him and does not look away from it, even when looking away would be considerably more comfortable. Let me tell you about the place first. The funeral home where I have worked for the past 11 years is a large facility, established in 1934, family-owned through 3 generations, and it occupies a Victorian building on the edge of the older part of the city that was converted from a private residence sometime in the 1940s. The building has the specific quality of old buildings that have been adapted for purposes their original construction did not anticipate, a quality of layers, of rooms that were something else before they were what they are now, of spaces whose proportions and orientations reflect decisions made by people with completely different intentions from the people currently using them. The preparation room is in the basement. It was, before the conversion, a wine cellar and then a storage space, and then at some point in the 1940s, it was fitted out as a preparation room with the drainage and the ventilation and the cold storage and the work surfaces that the function requires. The walls are the original stone of the building's foundation, and the ceiling is low, and the single window, which is at ground level and looks out at the base of the garden wall, admits a gray underwater quality of light in the daytime and nothing at all at night. It is a room that knows what it is. It has been a room where the dead are prepared for longer than I have been alive, and the accumulated weight of that, the sheer number of people who have passed through that room on their way from one state of being to another, is something you feel in the stone of the walls in a way that I do not try to articulate to people who have not felt it, because I do not have language adequate to the task. Now let me tell you about the rules. Every preparation room has its protocols, its documented procedures, its technical standards that govern the embalming process from the initial assessment through the arterial work, through the cosmetic restoration, and the dressing and the casketing. Those protocols are written down, and they are taught in mortuary school, and they are the professional and technical foundation of the work. I am not talking about those. I am talking about the other rules, the ones that are not written in any manual and not taught in any school and not discussed in any professional context, because the professional context does not have a framework for them. The rules that exist in this specific building, in this specific preparation room, that were communicated to me on my first night by the embalmer, I was replacing a man named Gerald who had worked this room for 19 years and who left not because of age or health or any ordinary reason for leaving a job, but because of something that happened in that room that he would not describe to me in any detail beyond saying that it was the third time and that he had decided before starting that the third time would be his last. Gerald spent 2 hours with me on my first night. He was thorough about the technical procedures and the supplier relationships and the documentation requirements and the family liaison protocols. And then, at the end of those 2 hours, when everything professional and institutional had been covered, he sat down across from me at the small desk in the corner of the preparation room, and he told me the other things. He told them to me quietly and seriously, and without any of the hedging or self-deprecating framing that people use when they are telling you something they know sounds irrational. Gerald did not sound irrational. Gerald sounded like a man reporting observations accurately, which is what he was doing, and the absence of any performance of rationality or irrationality in his delivery was the thing that told me most clearly that what he was saying was simply true as far as he was concerned, and that he was giving me the information because he believed I needed it. He told me 7 things. I am going to tell you all 7 because they are all relevant and because understanding all 7 is the only way to understand the full shape of what happened to me in my 7th year in this room. The first thing he told me was to always complete the preparation of any body received in a single session. Do not leave a preparation unfinished and return to it the next night. He said if a preparation requires more time than a single session allows, stay until it is complete. He said this with an emphasis that told me it was the most important of the 7 things, and that the emphasis was earned from experience. The second thing he told me was that the cold storage units, of which there are 4 in this facility, should always be locked after any body is placed inside. Not closed. Locked. He said there is a difference, and that the difference matters, and he said he was aware of how that sounded, and that I should note it anyway. The third thing he told me was that if I arrive for my shift and find the preparation room door unlocked, when I did not leave it unlocked, I should not enter the preparation room immediately. I should go upstairs, check that the building is otherwise secure, make myself a coffee, wait 20 minutes, and then enter. He could not explain to me why the 20 minutes mattered. He said only that it did. The fourth thing he told me was that there is a specific drawer in the instrument cabinet, the second drawer from the bottom on the left side, that I should not use. Not because it is broken, or because the instruments inside it are damaged, but because the instruments in that drawer have not been used since an incident he would not describe in 2009, and they should remain unused. He said if I was ever in a situation where I felt I needed to use them, that feeling was a signal that something had already gone wrong that evening, and I should consider finishing early and returning the following night. The fifth thing he told me was that on certain nights, which he could not predict in advance, but which I would learn to recognize over time, the preparation room has a quality that is different from its baseline quality. He described this difference as a kind of pressure, a sense of the room being more occupied than its contents account for. He said on those nights I should work efficiently and without conversation and without music, and I should leave as soon as the work is complete without doing any of the end of session cleaning tasks that would normally extend my time in the room. He said the cleaning could be done at the start of the next session. The sixth thing he told me was that if I am ever working in the preparation room, and I have the distinct sense that someone is standing behind me, I should not turn around. I should continue working and wait, and within a few minutes the sense will pass. He said this would happen. Not might happen. Would happen. He said it had happened to him regularly throughout 19 years, and that the procedure he described, continue working, do not turn around. Wait. had served him without exception until the third time, and at that point something about the procedure had not been adequate. And that was all he would say about the third time. The seventh thing he told me was about the body that comes back. He said that in 19 years, twice, he had prepared a body and placed it in cold storage and returned the following night to find that the body had been moved. Not removed from the facility. Not taken from storage and placed elsewhere in the building. Returned to the preparation table. Positioned differently from how it had been placed in storage. Hands arranged differently. Eyes, which are always closed and sealed during preparation, sometimes open. And once, on the second occasion, dirt under the fingernails of a body that had been fully prepared, fully cleaned, fully dressed, and locked in cold storage for 18 hours. He said he did not know what it meant. He said he had no explanation for the mechanism. He said he had, on both occasions, completed a second preparation, resealed the eyes, cleaned the hands, returned the body to storage, said nothing to the funeral home owners, and logged nothing in the official record. He said the second preparation had, on both occasions, held. The body was not returned to the table a third time, on either occasion. He said he was telling me this because it had happened twice in 19 years, and he believed the frequency suggested it would happen again, and he wanted whoever came after him to know what to do when it did. He stood up, shook my hand, and left. I never saw Gerald again after that night. I tried to contact him about 6 months into my tenure when I had questions about a supplier relationship and was told by the funeral home owner that Gerald had moved out of state and had not left contact information. I spent my first year in this room treating Gerald's 7 things the same way I initially treated rules I did not yet have evidence for, with a kind of provisional respect that was more about the quality of Gerald's delivery than about any belief in their necessity. I followed them because Gerald had given them to me seriously, and because I had no reason not to follow them, and because several of them, the locking of storage units, the completion of preparations in single sessions, had the quality of good professional practice, regardless of their supernatural framing. The others I followed because I had decided to follow them, and because in a job that requires the kind of trust that this job requires, the trust of the dead and the trust of their families, the discipline of following agreed procedures without constant renegotiation, is a professional virtue in its own right. And for the first 3 years nothing happened. The room was the room. The cold and the stone and the gray light and the drainage and the instruments and the work. I developed my rhythm. I developed my own relationship with the room's specific quality, the sense of weight and history in the walls. And I made the peace with it that I described earlier, the peace of someone who has accepted the terms of their environment. I learned to recognize the nights Gerald described as different, the nights of pressure and occupation, and I learned to work through them the way he described, efficiently, quietly, without music, and to leave when the work was done. That recognition, that ability to read the room's mood, developed over the first 2 years the way any environmental sensitivity develops, through accumulated exposure and attention. And by the end of my second year, it was as natural as reading weather. I knew when the room was ordinary, and I knew when it was not, and I adjusted accordingly. In my 4th year, the 6th thing happened for the first time. I am working a standard preparation, a woman in her late 70s, natural causes, family requesting traditional preparation and viewing. It is approximately 1:30 a.m., and I am at the midpoint of the arterial work, and the room is in its ordinary state, no pressure, no occupation quality, just the room and the work and the low hum of the ventilation. And then, with the abruptness of a light being switched on, I am certain that there is someone standing directly behind me. Not a gradual awareness, an immediate and complete certainty. The kind of certainty that is physical before it is cognitive, that registers in the back of the neck and between the shoulder blades before the mind has processed the sensory input into a coherent thought. I follow Gerald's instruction. I continue working. My hands keep moving because my hands know what they are doing well enough to continue without my full cognitive direction, which is a feature of 14 years of practice that I am profoundly grateful for in this moment, because my cognitive direction is entirely occupied with the sensation of standing between me and the wall behind me. Standing very close, within arm's reach, not moving, not making any sound, simply present, with a quality of presence that is specific and substantial and entirely unlike the room's ordinary quality of accumulated history. This is not the weight of years. This is the weight of something immediate and attentive. I wait, Gerald said within a few minutes. The few minutes are among the longest minutes I have experienced in this room, and I have experienced some long minutes in this room over the years. I keep my hands moving. I keep my eyes on the work. I breathe in the measured way that controlled situations require measured breathing. And after what my watch later tells me was 4 minutes and approximately 40 seconds, the sensation is gone. The abruptness of its ending mirrors the abruptness of its beginning, present and then not present with no gradual diminishment, no fading, just gone. I finish the preparation. I log the session. I drive home in the early morning, and I sit in my kitchen with coffee, and I think about Gerald's 6 things, and I move the 6th one from the category of provisional respect into the category of confirmed experience, and I adjust my relationship with the room accordingly. Which is to say, I do not adjust my relationship with the room in any outward way at all, but I carry a different quality of readiness into it from that night forward. A readiness for the thing behind me. An alertness in the back of my neck that was not there before, and that has not left since. The presence behind me happened 11 more times over the following 3 years. I tracked it in my personal notes. The frequency was not consistent, sometimes twice in a month, sometimes with a gap of several months. The duration was never less than 3 minutes, and never more than 7. The quality of it varied in ways that I found difficult to document precisely, but that were nonetheless real variations. Some nights it felt like attention. A directed, focused awareness pointed at the back of my head. Some nights it felt like something else, something closer to confusion. A presence that did not know exactly where it was or why. And twice, in the 6th year, it felt like something I can only describe as urgency, a quality of pressing forward, of wanting something from me specifically. That was different enough from the other varieties to make those 2 nights the longest 4 to 7-minute intervals of my professional life. I never turned around. Gerald's instruction was clear, and Gerald's instruction had, in 11 repetitions over 3 years, been adequate. I did not turn around. I will tell you that following that instruction became progressively harder over 11 repetitions rather than easier, which is the opposite of how habituation usually works, and which is itself a piece of information I have thought about without reaching a conclusion. You would expect that the 11th time you experience something without consequence, you would be less affected by it than the first time. You would expect the alarm response to dampen with repetition. It did not. Each time was as immediate and as complete as the first time, and the effort required to continue working and not turn around was consistent across all 11 occurrences. I note this because it is true, and because I think it is relevant to the nature of what was standing behind me, though I cannot specify the relevance with precision. In my 7th year, on a Tuesday night in March, the 7th thing happened. I need to tell you about the preparation that preceded it because the context matters. 3 nights before the Tuesday, on a Saturday, I received a body that I will call Mr. Ashworth, which is not his name but which I am using because the family is still living, and I am not a person who trades in other people's grief for an audience. Mr. Ashworth was 61 years old. He had died of a sudden cardiac event at home, alone, and had not been found for approximately 36 hours after his death. He was a large man, physically significant in the way that makes preparation work more demanding, and the 36-hour delay had created conditions that required careful and extensive work. I spent 6 hours on the Saturday night preparation. 6 hours is long for this work, but not unprecedented in these circumstances. And I was thorough because Mr. Ashworth's family had requested an open casket viewing, and because Mr. Ashworth deserved the same quality of care and attention as anyone else who comes to my table regardless of the circumstances of his arrival. At the end of 6 hours, the preparation was complete. Mr. Ashworth was dressed. His hands were folded across his chest in the position his daughter, had described as natural for him. A particular cross of right over left that he had apparently always adopted in repose, and his appearance was within the limits of what preparation can achieve. The best I could give him. I placed him in cold storage unit 3. I locked the unit, I logged the session, and I went home at 5:40 a.m. I came back on Sunday night, and I worked a different preparation, a straightforward case that took 3 hours, and I went home. I came back on Monday night, and I worked the documentation backlog and did a secondary assessment on the Sunday preparation, and I went home. Tuesday night I arrived at 10 p.m., and I went through the building check, ground floor, first floor, exterior perimeter, and then I unlocked the preparation room and I went downstairs. The preparation table was occupied. Mr. Ashworth was on the table. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, and I looked at this for a period of time I cannot accurately estimate, because time in that moment was not operating normally for me. Ashworth on the preparation table, and I ran through the list of explanations that a rational mind runs through when it encounters something that should not be the case. The owners had moved him for some reason. Another staff member had accessed the storage. There had been an administrative decision about the viewing schedule requiring a transfer. I ran through every explanation, and every explanation failed against the facts, which were that only 3 people had keys to this facility, myself and the 2 owners, that the owners had not contacted me about any change of plan, that the storage unit log showed the last access as my own on Saturday night, and that the lock on cold storage unit 3, which I examined from the bottom of the stairs without approaching the table, was still in the locked position. Cold storage unit 3 was locked. Mr. Ashworth was on the preparation table. I went upstairs. I sat in the arrangement office on the ground floor, and I breathed and I thought about Gerald's 7th thing. Returned to the preparation table. Positioned differently. And then I thought about the specific detail Gerald had included. The detail that he had clearly included deliberately because he was a precise man who did not include details without reason. Hands arranged differently. And I thought about the instruction I had been given by Mr. Ashworth's daughter, the specific instruction about the cross of right hand over left, the particular repose position that was natural for him. And I thought about whether I needed to go back downstairs and look at his hands before I could think clearly about what I was going to do next. I went back downstairs. I made myself walk to the table, and I made myself look, and I looked at Mr. Ashworth's hands, and they were folded left over right. The reverse of how I had placed them. The reverse of the position his daughter had described. And they were folded with a naturalness that preparation, placed hands do not have. A settling into the position that comes from a body arranging itself, rather than from a technician arranging it. And I am a person who knows the difference because I have placed hands on prepared bodies thousands of times, and the quality of deliberate placement and the quality of natural repose are distinct, and I could see in Mr. Ashworth's hands the quality of natural repose. I looked at his face. His eyes were closed. I had sealed them on Saturday, and they were sealed still. His face had the quality of the prepared, the stillness that is different from sleep, the particular set of the features that is the goal of the cosmetic work, and that I had achieved on Saturday night. I looked at his hands again. Left over right, and then I looked at his fingernails. Gerald had said it once in 2 occasions. Not both times, once. Dirt under the fingernails. Gerald had included this detail in his account, and I had filed it as the most inexplicable element of the 7th thing, more inexplicable than the return to the table. More inexplicable than the repositioned hands, because at least for the table and the hands you could construct, however improbably, a scenario involving human agency. But dirt under the fingernails of a body that had been fully cleaned and fully prepared and locked in cold storage was not a thing that human agency could account for. And I am standing at the table looking at Mr. Ashworth's hands and under the fingernails of his left hand, the hand that is now on top, the hand that is facing upward. There is dirt. A specific dark soil, darker than the garden soil outside this building, with a compacted quality that you see in soil that has been under pressure. The kind of soil that is found at depth. The kind of soil that is found below other soil. I want to be honest with you about my internal state at this point in the evening, because I think honesty about this is important, and because the honest answer is not what you might expect. I was not in a state of panic. I was not in a state of disbelief. I was in a state that I can only describe as a very cold and very focused clarity, the state that I think certain kinds of extreme situation produce in certain kinds of person. A state in which the emotional response is present, but is running in a separate channel from the functional response. And the functional channel is very clear and very calm, and is asking one question only, which is, what do I do now? Gerald had told me what to do. Gerald had been in this situation twice, and had found one approach adequate, and had communicated it to me specifically, so that I would have it when I needed it. Complete a second preparation. Reseal the eyes, clean the hands. Return the body to storage. Say nothing to the owners. Log nothing officially. I got my apron. I got my gloves. I turned on the preparation room lights to their full working brightness. All of them, every light in the room. Because it was a Tuesday night in March, and I was about to do a second preparation on a body that had been in cold storage for 3 days, and that was on my table with soil under its fingernails from somewhere. I was not going to think about directly, and I wanted every light in the room on. I turned on no music, the fifth thing. Efficient, quiet, no music. I worked for 2 hours. I am not going to tell you everything about those 2 hours, because some of it is technical, and some of it is private in a way that I feel obligated to protect even in this context. Because Mr. Ashworth's family trusted this facility with his care, and that trust does not expire when things become unusual. What I will tell you is that the work was the work. My hands knew what to do and they did it. The professional ethic that has held me for 14 years held me through those 2 hours, and I am grateful for it in a way that is difficult to articulate. I cleaned the hands. I removed the soil from under the fingernails carefully and completely. I resealed the preparation and I redressed and I refolded the hands, right over left, as the daughter had specified, and I placed Mr. Ashworth back in cold storage unit 3, and I locked the unit. And I stood in the preparation room for a moment after locking it. The room was in its ordinary state. No pressure, no occupation. The sense of the room's long history in the walls, always present, but nothing acute or immediate. I stood there for a moment and I said quietly to the room and to whatever the room contains, and to Mr. Ashworth specifically, that he was ready now and that his daughter was coming on Thursday, and that she was going to be all right, and that he had been well cared for. I do not know why I said it. I have not said anything like it before or since. It felt necessary in the way that some things feel necessary before you have a reason for them, and I have learned over 14 years to trust that feeling in this room. I went upstairs. I logged the session as a routine secondary assessment. I made coffee and sat in the arrangement office until my shift ended. I drove home in the early morning, and I did not sleep that day, not immediately. But I was calm in a way that still surprises me when I think about it. A calm that I think came from having done the work correctly. From having had the information I needed and used it. From Gerald, who I have thought about every shift since that Tuesday in March, who worked this room for 19 years and went through the 7th thing twice and the 6th thing more times than he told me, and who sat across from me on my first night and gave me everything he had learned because he was a professional and because he cared about the person coming after him. Mr. Ashworth's viewing was on Thursday. His daughter came. The family came. The viewing was what a good viewing is when the preparation has been done correctly, which is a private thing between a family and the person they are saying goodbye to, and I will say nothing more about it except that it went as it should, and that Mr. Ashworth looked as I intended him to look, and that his hands were folded right over left the way his daughter had described. He was not returned to the table after that. I checked every night for a week, longer than was probably necessary, and cold storage unit 3 was as it should be each time. The second preparation held, as Gerald said it would. I have been in this room for 11 years since that first night with Gerald. The presence behind me still comes, and I still do not turn around, and the not turning around is still as difficult as it was the first time. The room still has its pressure nights, and I still work them the way Gerald described. The instruments in the second drawer from the bottom on the left remain unused. I have looked at them once, on a night in my 9th year, when I was trying to understand what Gerald meant about the feeling of needing them being a signal, and what I saw when I looked at them told me nothing technically useful and everything I needed to know about why they should remain where they are. I will work this room for as long as I work it. When I leave, I will sit down with whoever comes next, and I will spend 2 hours with them the way Gerald spent 2 hours with me. And at the end of those 2 hours, I will tell them 7 things. 8 things now. The 8th thing is mine, learned from a Tuesday night in March that Gerald did not know about and could not have anticipated, but that I think he would recognize. The 8th thing is this: when you have completed the second preparation and you have done everything correctly and the work is finished, say something. To the room, to the person on the table, to whatever is present in the stone walls of this basement that has heard more last things than any place should have to hold. Say something true. Say something that is meant. It does not have to be long. It does not have to be poetic. It just has to be genuine. Because this room and everything in it has a very sensitive instrument for detecting what is genuine. And in my experience, in this room, at this hour, the genuine thing is the thing that matters. I will tell the next person to follow all 8 things. And I will look at them the way Gerald looked at me. And I will hope it is enough. It has been enough so far. But I think about Gerald's 3rd time, the one he would not describe, and I think about the fact that Gerald had 19 years in this room and 2 occurrences of the 7th thing, before the 3rd time. Whatever the 3rd time was, and I count my years, and I count my occurrences, and I keep working, and I keep paying attention, and I keep the lights on, and I do not turn around, and I say something true at the end of the hard nights. And so far that has been enough. The room is quiet now. The preparation is complete. The storage is locked. The lights are off except for the one I leave on always. The small light in the corner that Gerald also left on always, and that was on when I arrived on my first night, and that I have never turned off in 11 years. For reasons that neither Gerald nor I have ever needed to articulate, because some things in this work you understand without being told. I am going upstairs now. I am going to make coffee and sit in the arrangement office and wait for the morning. And tomorrow night I will come back, and the room will be the room, and the work will be the work, and I will do it with the full attention it deserves, because the people who come to this table deserve nothing less. That is the job. That is what Gerald gave me, and what I will give the person who comes after me. The work and the attention and the 8 things and the small light in the corner. That is everything. If you were the next embalmer walking into this room on your first night, which of the 8 things would make you walk straight back out?